Shintaro Higashi, welcome to the Man of War podcast, brother. It's an honor to have you on, man.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Hey, listen, so just to start with, what I would love to do is introduce yourself to our audience for those who have never heard about you or starting to follow you here. I think that, man, you have a tremendous credential list here. So I'm going to let you you're going to say it better than I will. Trust me on that.
Awesome. All right. So my name is Shintaro Higashi. I'm a lifelong martial artist. I'm most known for judo. I have two judo schools now in Manhattan. I was on the world team twice. I won nationals twice. I have other backgrounds in other martial arts: Japanese jiu-jitsu, karate, aikido. Done Muay Thai. I've boxed. I did Sambo, in the last 5 years, and I made a Pan Am team, and I won the Pan Am championship, and I made a world team there in the Sambo realm. It's like a judo wrestling hybrid, if you don't know what it is. And I've done a lot of Brazilian jiu-jitsu too. So, martial arts is my thing, and yeah, that's what I do. That's what I teach, and that's my entire presence online now. So,
Awesome. So
yeah.
talk to me a little bit about where you came from and really what started gearing you up to start training in the martial arts.
Well, so my father came over from Japan to spread judo. It was like a pioneering sort of judo initiative throughout the globe situation in the 1960s. Judo was super popular in the 60s and 70s, and he was part of that initiative. So he came with the sole purpose to spread judo to the United States. And, obviously I was born and, thrown right into judo. So, earliest memories being at the dojo, training with my father, training with the guys. And my whole life has been, competition after competition, and it's slowed down now. Now that I'm a little bit older now, I'm 36, I'm retired from competition. Now my goals have changed. I'm a father now, but my entire life has been about, training martial arts and doing martial arts and things like that.
Do you like the fact that martial arts is kind of like a conduit or some type of connection that you have with the spiritual world? For example, I think that a lot of martial artists in your level like this, you're constantly competing. There's a certain connection with spirituality, with kind of like within you. Okay, the mindset, basically how you identify yourself. Man, you are a full bore martial artist since you were born. So, talk to me a little bit about your mindset and your spirituality, okay, connected to these martial arts, because judo, to me, judo is an unbelievable art, man. Where an aikido also, I hold black belts in both, and
Nice.
it's there's a beautiful connection, but every person is different. So, talk to me a little bit
Yeah.
about your mentality.
So, there's sport fighting and then there's martial arts, right? And the way I grew up through the education system of martial arts, a lot of it was self-improvement, right? It's a vehicle of self-improvement. You're going through there, you're training, it's hard. You get taken down, you get back up, you get scared, especially if you're a kid and you're fighting someone 3 years older, 30 pounds heavier, you get scared, right? What kid is not going to get scared? So like, my father being out on the sidelines, like, get in there, like
Yeah,
with
yeah.
these types of mentality, like you grew up in that thing and it kind of makes you tougher, right? It makes you better. And, it really is this self-improvement vehicle, right? And, I truly, when I preach this stuff, I live it, and I've been through it. So yeah, it just makes me a better person, better man. And, that's what it's really all about.
When you are training for these for these competitions, okay, your focus is obviously winning, but the question
Mhm.
is, as you dive into the martial arts, I mean, especially now, diet, the way that you have to time yourself properly for the
Yeah.
to peak at during that day or during those days. Your coaching team. I mean, how do you prepare yourself really for these competitions when you were competing?
So you do have a team, right? The more successful you get, the more people you have on board. I had a strength and conditioning coach, this guy Martin Rooney. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He's very famous.
Mhm.
He did NFL Combine. He did, the Gracie family with the, MMA and all that stuff. So I had him as a strength and conditioning guy. He was my mentor also. Had a flexibility coach. I had a nutritionist. All these different people on board, at my disposal, right? I had a sports psychologist kind of coaching me through the sidelines and telling me stuff, and people, personal trainers, strength and conditioning guy who would come up with like the ultimate strategy and the plan. But then there was a personal trainer that would kind of like help me implement some of these things. And all these different things came into play together to like sort of peak at the right time. And yeah, boy, it was very interesting ride. Very very interesting, tough, but really rewarding.
When you teach nowadays, what is your focus? Are you teaching a sport, martial arts, more geared towards self development or self defense? Talk to me a little bit about that.
So what I like to do is I like to kind of teach to the room, right? There's a lot of people coming into the dojo. Sometimes we have 30, 40 people on the mat, and I kind of gauge who needs what and then kind of teach what I want to teach generally. And some days that's sort of like, you know what, we should focus on leg grabs. I know sport judo doesn't do leg grabs anymore, right? But it's kind of important if you're doing it from a self-defense standpoint, right? People on the streets not going to care about what rule set you trained under. So they're going to dive in for the legs, try to double leg take down you. So you need to know how to sprawl and defend, and then look for a guillotine choke, which is more the BJJ realm. But judokas need to know this, right? So I will teach sort of on the martial side of things. Not, majority of my guys don't compete, right? I would probably say like 5 to 10% of my athletes in my dojo compete. And it's a distribution curve, right? So you can't have the training and practice be only dedicated to sport judo, because then you miss out on a lot of other things. Double leg takedown, defending a double, right? Defending the guillotine, all these different things. So when I'm coaching to the room, but it's more so what I want to teach, right? It's sort of, it's not, I understand like the idea of like not scalable, right? You want a curriculum so anybody could come in and teach for you, and that's how you grow a business. But it really is, my methodology of like, hey, if you want to learn from me, I'm going to teach what I want to teach, and I'm going to just cover everything, not just the sports specific stuff. Right.
It's a good mindset to have. It's a good philosophy. A lot of dojos nowadays, and I ran my dojo for 8 years, and so I started breaking away and doing this. But what I noticed was that for the most part, most dojos were running on curriculum where anybody could come in and teach and kind of like leave
Yeah.
where the other person. But I find that to be a little bit less personal. I
Yeah,
think that
for
when you
sure.
go in there and you teach from the heart and you teach
Yeah.
based on what you're seeing, there's so much more power in that, man. There's so much
Yeah.
more connection.
Absolutely. There's a little bit of conflict too, because you want to be able to scale from a business standpoint, right? And if you're not making the rent every month, then it's going to be a very difficult business to keep going. So you want to make it so that, and you do martial arts your whole life. Now you start a business. You don't have business acumen. So you have to like learn and do all these other things to keep the lights on. So it kind of takes you away, and it's like, oh man, I'm good at judo, but I gotta get this guy to teach so I could, do this and do that
Of
and put
course,
out fires. And so, it's kind of unfortunate, but that's the advantage of us. We've been, in the basement of the Buddhist church in New York City for, 50 something years. So, a lot of this stuff has been automated, right? So I could
sure.
really kind of focus on this. And, I'm not trying to grow, 300, 400 students anymore. I'm happy, content with a certain number of people, and I'll just teach those people, right?
Very good. Very good. All right. So let's kind of shift hats a little bit here. As a uh, martial artist, I mean,
Mm.
you've learned. I mean, I guess you've been training in MMA. I guess you have, more so not MMA, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, um, Japanese Jiu Jitsu. I assume, right? You
Yeah.
mentioned that.
Yeah.
Yep. Uh, Aikido, Judo, Sambo. I mean, you have a lot of different arts under
Wrestling
your
too.
belt here.
Wrestling's a good one. Yeah.
Wrestling. All right.
Yeah.
So
Wrestling's a great martial art.
so tell me about when you take these martial arts and you've trained them all. What do you find in each? There's nowadays there's a lot of different conflicts out there with different martial arts styles, whether
Yeah.
it be MMA, whether it be judo versus jiu-jitsu versus Brazilian jiu-jitsu versus this versus that. There's a lot of mocking going around also in the martial arts world.
Oh yeah,
this style
absolutely.
doesn't
Yeah.
this style doesn't work, that style doesn't work, or this style is better than that. What's your take on that, as far as being that you're a rounded martial artist?
I think that's a very good question. I think a lot of people forget about the individual athlete and the individual mindset, right? There are types of people out there who are freak athletes who will be good at any martial art, who can, hold their own if they have a certain background in any kind of martial arts.
Mhm.
And I kind of use this example, like if you take the best athlete in the world, right, teach that person any martial art and put them against an average Joe who's been training 5 years, 6 years, right? That super athlete's going to win, and a great example, this example has been thrown around so many times over and over, but like, me training entire life martial arts, you training entire life martial arts, you put us against like a gorilla, like a silverback gorilla with no martial arts technique whatsoever. That gorilla is going to grab our wrist, crush it, and then eat us. You know what I mean? And so there is a lot of ability that can be overshadowed with big, strong, fast athleticism and mindset. Mindset's a big one, right? I don't know if you ever heard like the lobster theory, with like Malcolm Gladwell. Like lobsters never really fight. You ever heard of this one?
No, no, tell me.
So you get a lobster in the wild, you get another lobster in the wild, they come up together, and then the lobster who blusters more, get bigger and stronger, more like this, and shows no fear, that lobster usually wins because
Hmm.
the scared lobster kind of scurries away. Now that lobster is mentally beaten. So the next lobster he counts is like, oh man, I almost got destroyed by this other lobster, and it just becomes this negative spiral downwards, right? And then the bigger lobster who won that initial match is much more likely to win the second match, the third match, because he knows no loss. He knows no fear, right? So it's kind of like this mindset of like the lobster of like, they never really actually fight. But the best lobsters in the wild, who are the biggest and the baddest, kind of got there from a psychological standpoint, not really kind of getting into it with any other lobster. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So
Interesting.
like the mentality, individual athlete, a lot of this stuff can overshadow some skill, right? Little skill, right? So it's a combination of both. And I think the individual athlete and the mindset of individual man or woman or whoever's doing it, right? I think that gets completely overseen, right? So like that, put that on one spectrum, and then you have to sort of add in the martial arts. You know what I mean?
Effective for example, when you're out there and let's just take one aspect. Okay. We got
Yeah.
the self-defense approach. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is very, very hyper different than the competition approach. Okay.
Mm.
Being that you've studied these arts, um, which one do you think is best for self-defense?
Self-defense. I
Applicable
don't
on the
think
street.
applicable on the street. People are going to hate me for saying this, but like I think wrestling is a really good one, right? Because you have the ability to take someone down. We're talking about on the street, right?
Hmm.
Everyone can throw hands high up here, swinging wildly. If you could change levels fast and shoot in, body lock him, double leg him, and now you're there against an unskilled opponent, it is very easy for a skilled grappler to lift them and slam them, right? And that's generally the end of it, right? If you're talking strictly one to one in a setting where I'm fully aware, right? Because
Hmm.
awareness is another thing. I could be walking down the street listening to my iPod or something, and then somebody attacks me from behind. I don't see it coming. There's two of them, right? You never really know, Maybe I'm nursing a knee injury or something.
Right, right, right.
So, in terms of that, like if you were to neutralize and take out all the different surprising and the factor, the different elements, I think grappling has a big advantage, right?
Cool.
Stand up grappling, judo, wrestling, sambo, the heavy takedown martial arts are great.
Very good.
I'm a big believer of that.
All right, let's talk a little bit about your competition. All right, you won. I mean, I can go down the list here, and I have them written down. Um, eh, let's talk about that. Your mindset for competition. All right, when you're out there and you're competing against another human being and another person that's right there with you. Okay, their skill
Yeah.
level is because the difference between having competed myself also the difference between the guy that lost the second place guy and the first place guy is very, very, very fine when you're
Yeah.
competing at a
Very
very high
narrow.
level. Yes.
Yeah.
So how do you edge out your opponents? How do you edge out the guys that you've beat? I mean, is it more mindset, or you think that somehow you were, in more, I guess, trained or physically in better condition? You alluded to earlier, regarding the condition of a person, physicality. If that
Yeah.
person is an athlete, and he can probably start at a faster level, learn things faster, and maybe even be better at this specific art than a guy that's been training for 4 or 5 years within a few months. So, talk to me about your mindset going into competition and how you think you've had the edge.
I had a little bit of success. I wouldn't call it like the biggest success, right? Because the big successes, it's on a spectrum, and you talk like multiple gold medalists, Olympics and stuff like that. I've never achieved that level, But I have achieved relative success, and a lot of that I think comes with experience. Doing it over and over, seeing what the opponent's doing, being able to read the opponent, and that's sort of like the psychological side. A guy comes out blazing, right, super hot. It's a 5 minute match or whatever it is under the different rule sets. A lot of the times they're going to gas themselves out, right? 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and then after they gas themselves up, throwing everything in the kitchen sink at you. Now you kind of know what the stuff that they do, right? So now you're aware, oh, these are the combination that he is. He goes inside trip. He has one left attack. He does mostly right, right versus right. His grip is not good. I could out grip him. All right. And you kind of take it from there. He's getting tired. Let's see what his groundwork is like. His groundwork is not so good. He tries to shy away from it. Okay, that's where I'm going to win the match, right? So those things I think really help me, a lot of my matches. Being able to read the opponent, feel them out, see what their weaknesses are, and that's mental too. And in my earlier phases of competition, I would sometimes go out there and just brawl, right? And it was my mentality earlier to just kind of go out there like a storm, just give it my best, right? But the older I got, the more I realized that wasn't the most efficient approach,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I was able to like read my opponents better and really capitalize on their weaknesses and really exploit them for that, right? And then kind of use my strengths, right? Because sometimes you're not going to be, in as good a shape as the other person. Sometimes, the other person does something really well, and sometimes they have tricks up their sleeves you don't really know. So being able to bring your energy level down and stay calm and then kind of really understand your opponent, I think was a big advantage that I had, later on in my career, the more experience that I got.
Do you teach kids at all?
I do.
Okay. Um,
Sometimes.
right. So a young person, teaching uh, as a martial arts instructor. Um, to me personally, my experience teaching young people is you literally have to wear a completely different hat,
Mm.
okay, than teaching adults. Um, my question is for you, being you're a newer father now, or you have
Yeah,
a
my daughter's 3.
okay, so you're a
Yeah.
young father now, and these principles that you bring to the table and you teach the younger generation, the younger 5, 8, 10 year olds,
Yeah.
ultimately, what do you want them to get out of the martial art that you're teaching? I mean, outside of the self-defense aspect,
Yeah.
what disciplines do you want to teach to your younger guys and girls?
I mean, discipline like in martial art, I think
Yes.
judo is one of the big ones that I want to teach my daughter, and I think first and foremost, developing a love for the sport. And kids love fun, so it's
Mhm.
got to be fun. So make it fun, make them love it. So now they keep coming back, and then once they're coming back, training, training, training. Now, sort of, you could start little by little adding and building, and I haven't really done it with my daughter yet, right? She's
Mhm.
3,
Yeah.
but I've done it, with countless students coming through my program. And the more experienced in the group, the older the business got, the more I had, other instructors helping me. Uh, but the first and foremost is love and fun, love for the sport, have a good time, and then little by little creating this environment where they could really stand up for themselves. That's really the most important thing about martial arts, right? Knowing that if some kid put their hands on him or her, right, they take him down.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
it really is like the ultimate thing for kids, because kids wrestle. They just wrestle without even knowing. I saw 2 4-year-olds the other day in the park, and they're just wrestling. They have no experience, and their mom's like, oh no, no, don't do it, don't do it, you can't do that. But then they're
Right.
like on top of each other, putting each other in headlocks. Oh shoot, the guy's behind him, the kid picked him up and like dropped him. I'm like, yeah. So it's kind of ingrained in our DNA to do this. So I think judo and wrestling and those kind of grappling arts really build on that. So, I'm a big
Now
fan of it.
let me ask you a question. When when you teach your younger children, the youngers, okay, discipline in your part, for example, do you institute some type of like rigid discipline, the way that they sit in class, the way that they bow to each other? Or is it more of a laid back type of atmosphere?
It's definitely disciplined, but I don't do it in the conventional sense of like, hey, sit there. Hey, be quiet. Hey, you have to listen to your sensei. Yes, sensei. Yes, sensei. I don't do any of that stuff. I make sure the pace of the class is interesting enough. This is what I'm teaching, right? That they are so interested in whatever I have to say that they're just like listening and then zoned in. And as soon as a kid starts messing around or goofing off on the side, I say, okay, maybe I'm not being interesting enough. So I make it relevant to them. It's like, hey guys, How many of you guys seen, Batman or whatever it is? Like, oh, this move is done by Batman does this. Ippon Sanagi, like Batman throws people, launches people. You want to be like Batman? Like, I'm gonna show you how to be like Batman. All right, come
Gotcha.
circle around. Come on in. Come on in. And no kid is messing around after you throw Batman in there. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So yeah, that's kind of my approach.
Awesome. Now, your philosophy, okay, for the adults. What's your philosophy there when you're training somebody that steps in into your dojo for the first time and says, you know what, I just want to do judo and or
Yeah.
jujitsu for personal development, but I want to be physically fit and I want to learn how to defend myself.
Yeah, that's the ideal client, really. The people who are trying to make it to our clients or students are people who are coming in after work, and they're
Hmm.
accountants, lawyers, doctors, personal trainers, all these different types of people. They're not going to give up their career to try to make a world team or something like this. You know what I mean? So bringing out their personal best and then having them really enjoy judo and reap the benefits of judo is like my number one goal, and I'm pretty good at that. I'm not recruiting guys. I'm not forcing competition down, the throats of people. What happens a lot of times when you're like pushing competition all the time is you create a tiered system in the dojo, right? Kids who've come up through the system, who's been doing it 10 years, they're tier one citizens. And now all of a sudden, the people who are coming to judo after work, who are in their 30s, they're tier two citizens, right? You
Hmm.
create this natural hierarchy. And now all of a sudden, there's not really a place for everyone to train anymore, you know? So a lot of it is like, this is a little bit Eastern, but like the collectivist mindset of like everyone has to make each other better in here, right? Everyone has a different starting point. Some people are jacked, some people are small, some people are tall, some people are fat, right? We're all starting from different points, but we're all trying to get better here, right? If you're trying to make this person next to you better and the next to you better, then they're going to return the same thing. And then in theory, everybody in the room is trying to make you better, right? And not purely altruistic because everyone has their best interest at heart too, right? So, but you have this mindset of like, I want to get better. I want, because that guy wants to get better, and we're all going to elevate each other, right? Disregarding like who's does what competition, who is what belt. Everyone has a different stance, a different starting point, but we're all going to make each other better, right? And that's like the number one philosophy for my school, and it's working pretty good, I think.
Awesome. Talk to me about how martial arts has helped you in your life. Okay. From a perspective of maybe give me an example. What has been something very difficult in your life that the martial arts has helped you overcome it?
Martial arts has helped me overcome it.
The principles and yeah, so things like that.
It's not so much like one event that was very difficult for me. It
Hmm.
feels like I'm in a great place mentally because I do martial arts, right? It's not like, oh, this thing happened to me and I got over it because I did martial arts. But a lot of this stuff that could potentially happen that's really bad, I've been able to not encounter because I have this mindset of being not better than everyone, but like improving myself all the time, improving myself all the time. So my academic background too. It's something. I have two master's degrees. Not to brag or anything. I got two master's degree, I got an MBA, and a teaching degree, and that stuff too. It carries over from the martial arts world of like, hey, you got to constantly improve yourself. You know what I mean? It's like the idea of like having a sensei. That's you want to look up to that sensei. You don't want to you know out of shape instructor that's you don't want to be like that person, you don't want to be like that guy, right?
Sure.
So making myself constantly better, right, so people look up to me and things like this, like it puts you in a great place because, man, I hope I'm not coming off like a crazy person.
No, no.
Like,
What you're saying is spot on, man.
yeah, you want to be that person, and when you're that person, a lot of these negative things are much less likely to happen to you, I think,
Hmm.
right? If you're the best at judo, if you're always training, if you're good to people, and you have the other people's thing at heart, people come in to train. Now all of a sudden, people want to be around you. And even if you don't have the best business skills, people are going to want to come be around you, right? Things like this. No one wants an out of shape trainer, right?
Hmm.
So it's like, oh
No
man, I want
doubt.
to get in shape. And not I'm not in the best of shape, but like people, that's sort of kind of like yeah, I hope I answered your question.
No, you
It's
did.
kind of
You
like this
did.
roundabout way.
No, you were good with that. All right, let me ask you another question here. That's kind of like around the same lines. When we talked about physicality, mentality, and are you a spiritual guy? Or are you more of a down to earth, pragmatic type of guy?
I would say a little bit more pragmatic. You know, the danger of martial arts and being a little bit too spiritual, things like that. People put too much meaning to where things are not, right? And I really like to focus down on the mechanics of the technique, right? Like throwing mechanics, the physics behind it, you
Hmm.
know, lever, fulcrum, leverage, all this stuff. As opposed to, because it's very, very easy for people to say, "Oh, I felt Sensei's energy and he threw me." Now it's not something that I acquired. It's like something that like kind of this other world level of, right, something that I, you know, unexplainable, you know. Now all of a sudden you're relying on faith, right? And the lines can get very murky, especially with a Eastern background, like a Japanese background. People kind of seek that a lot of the times, who are looking for martial arts instructors and, you know, the sensei stuff, right? And you know, you've probably seen it a million times. The sensei syndrome is a real syndrome. You know
Hmm.
what I mean?
Hmm.
So like I kind of tried to steer away from it. I am a spiritual person personally, but I try to kind of leave it out of from the martial arts side. You know,
Got it.
yeah, there's a meditating component at the very end of the practice, and there's the dojo creed and stuff like this, and we talk about spirit being one of the creeds, the four creeds of the dojo. But I try not to put too much attention on it.
Got it. Well said. All right, let's go back to, I'm going to kind of break it down to different competition. Wrestling versus judo.
Hmm.
Give me an idea of what it is to compete wrestling versus competing in judo. What are certain things that are different, certain things that are alike?
The most different thing, you know, growing up doing wrestling and judo was that wrestling, you do a part of the school system. So high school team, college team. So you
Hmm.
really have sort of this brotherhood behind you, right? You're
Hmm.
going to the tournaments together, you're wearing the same colors, you're wearing the same uniform. A lot of the times, judo, yes, but it's a little bit more scattered because you have a lot more random dojos. It's very rare to see a judo team bringing 40 people deep, right?
Hmm.
So you have this dojo bringing 5 people, that dojo bringing 6 people, and you sort of have your local favorites, right? And then the depth is not as deep in the United States. Now, I'm not talking Japan, Cuba, Russia. I'm not talking about those countries. I'm talking in the United States specifically. There's a lot more depth in wrestling. You could go into a wrestling tournament, have a 47-person bracket, you know, and you have to, it's a long day. You have to win 6 matches in a row, you know? And so it's a little bit of a different feel, you know, going in there. It feels more, wrestling feels more like war, right? Because you got your brothers with you, your teammates with you, you're all wearing the same colors. It's you, and then they keep great track of the team score. So it's like if you pin someone, you put 6 points on your team's, you know,
Yeah.
and then the scoreboard is right there, right? People yelling and screaming. It's not guided by the respect principle. So people yell and screaming, get into shoving matches sometimes. It's a little bit more goonish,
Hmm.
right? And it's a lot more grittier, you know. And judo has the sort of the Eastern philosophy of like respect, right? So you're like, you have to bow to your opponent, you have to carry yourself a certain way, you know. You don't like get angry, throw your gi, you know, to the side. You don't do any of that stuff. So in that way, it was very, very different. But the culture is very, actually, there's a lot more similarities than there are differences. They're both grappling sports. You know, there's a lot of ego based, right? You know,
Right.
because 2 people walk onto the mat, one person emerges winner.
Sure.
So a lot of that stuff with like, I want to be the champ, I want to win, you know, break your opponent, you know, mentally, physically, whatever it is, outskill them, outmaneuver them, all that stuff still holds true, right? So very, very similar. But the major difference, I think, is, you know, wrestling is a little bit more team-ish. You know, it's not a team sport, but it has a more team-ish feel.
Very good. All right. Talk to me about Sambo. All right. That's usually
Yeah.
that's usually a little bit different than what we discussed. It's not a very or as popular as judo and
Yeah.
so talk to me about that. I'm interested in that.
Yeah, Sambo's really cool, man. It's a wrestling judo hybrid, and it's a sport that's immensely popular in Russia, Bulgaria, all those Soviet countries. And it really is like almost perfect rule set. You know, you could shoot it on the legs. You know, you're not wearing gi pants, you're wearing those wrestling shorts, so you could wrestle and you could do judo. You could do leg locks, straight knee bars, ankle locks, elbow locks. Yeah, very, very intense. You know, the Pan American region's not so strong at Sambo, but like you go to the Soviet, you go to the Europeans, those guys are savages. And you see a lot of crossover. You know, I remember when I went to the Sambo Worlds, I saw a bunch of judo guys there. You know, I knew the guy who I competed against from Kazakhstan. He was like, you know, 36th in the world at the time at judo. He was there. I saw the Mongolian champion Kashpatar. he was there, and it's just like an oh shoot, like oh man, look at you, you know, like it's like a reunion almost of guys who did
Yeah.
judo 5 years ago, who have retired, are now doing sambo, right? Because it's a little bit easier to make it out of the country, in sambo because just the population is a lot lower, right, as opposed to like judo, right? And I think it's same across the entire globe, except Russia.
When at one point in your life when you started training, did you you learned it from your dad initially, right? Judo.
Yeah.
You started okay. At what point did you decide to start learning or training in different martial arts?
So the dojo was a Japanese martial arts school, right? So that was like growing up, we had to do all the martial arts: judo, jujitsu, aikido, and karate. Right? I took judo obviously the most serious because that was the biggest one in the club. So judo, I was doing a lot of that, right? And then when I was in high school, I started wrestling, and that was like I fell in love with wrestling. I was good at it right off the bat because of my judo experience, and then I wrestled in college. So that was really the extent of the four Japanese martial arts and wrestling. And then after college, I started doing a little bit more, striking oriented stuff. Doing karate is a little bit different than like boxing and Muay Thai, right? So I had a great friend, Joe Sampieri, who's a Muay Thai coach at the Henzo Gracie Muay Thai down and he would always invite me. And I didn't like train full time or anything like that. I, worked out with him a bunch of times, handful of times. But that kind of gave me the feel of like, oh man, I really like this striking stuff. So I got into boxing, and I was doing boxing for a couple of years, sparring, doing this stuff and trying to refine myself there. And then jujitsu, I've kind of been on and off for like the last decade. And I kind of have like a great partnership with this guy, Brian Glick. He teaches me Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and I teach him Judo. So it's a great little two-way situation. He comes over, we work out Judo for an hour, we do Jiu Jitsu for an hour, and then we just kind of hang out for a little bit. So, yeah, man, in and out. And then one day, Sambo US coach, who's a judo coach, and said, hey, man, you want to compete in this tournament? I was like, sure, you know? And then I had some success there and I just kind of kept the ball rolling. And now I haven't in a couple of years. I'm 36 now. Um, but yeah, that's sort of in and out of all the different martial arts.
So, who was a mentor in your life outside
Oh,
of
that's a good one.
outside of your father, maybe,
Yeah.
or relative? Outside of that, like more of a someone that kind of brought you to that next level, someone that you followed.
Yeah, I have a couple of people that immediately springs to mind. One guy, Martin Rooney, I've already spoke about him. He was my strength and conditioning coach, and he
Hmm.
got me when I was like 18, 19 years old, and up until that point, like I was number one in the country in judo, at the not like under 20, but just like full blown adult judo. I was 19 years old. But like I wasn't really doing everything right. I was just doing a ton of judo, lifting, crazy heavy weight, but doing like a bodybuilder's lift, like back and buys, chest and tries and just really reading muscle and fitness and those kind of things and just just taking a lot of protein shakes and just lifting as heavy as I can. I wasn't really doing anything scientifically yet. And my father kind of was like, just go out there and grapple as hard as you can and train as hard as you can and that's it, right? So he didn't really teach, you know what I mean? So when I met Martin, he was like, come over. I'm a strength and conditioning like God, right? He's like, I know everything. He didn't say this, but that's who he is, right? I work with all these different players, NFL combine, like that's my thing. Come to my gym, went to this gym, and all of a sudden I'm working out with this guy 3 times a week for like, 2, 3 years. And during that time, he's a lot older than I was. He just started kind of like indoctrinating me with these little isms, that really kind of stuck with me. And I still kind of live by some of them, right? Like, he'll say things like, don't get frustrated, get fascinated, right? Anytime you find yourself getting frustrated, be fascinated. You want to be a student of the sport, the student of whatever it is. And that's something that I still try to, I get frustrated, get pissed off when something's not going my way. And now I'm like, all right, you know what? Find what's interesting about the situation, right? And then try to overcome it. And so Martin was definitely a major influence in my life, and he moved away, yeah, in my early 20s. So, I haven't seen him in a long time, but, that short amount of time that I spent with him, 2 to 3 years, 4 years, that really made a lasting impact on me.
What are your thoughts on the Olympics this year, the judo?
Oh, man. I think It's very exciting. It was really sad to see the U.S. team kind of not producing at all, and the Japan crushed it. It was very interesting. And from a person that like knows a lot of these guys who are out there, there was a part of me that was like, oh man, like I missed out a little bit. But the older you get, the kind of harder it is to kind of be in it, right? As you would know, once you competed at a certain level, and I was 43rd in the world on the world ranking list at one point in my life, and now I have different responsibilities, right? I have two businesses to run, a daughter to raise. Now all of a sudden, it's like going to a tournament, 3-4 tournaments a month, stay international, stays and whatnot. You're out 70% of the time. You're not home 70% of the time. So all those different things, I'm not able to do anymore. And I made those sacrifices for right because I had to because of life stuff. But there's always a little bit of watching it, like, man, I wish I could still be out there, and I wish I could still kind of get going. And I feel like I know more than these guys. I do know more now than I did before, right? But it's like, man, I wish I could, and it's a little bit kind of it stings a little bit still when I see it from the sidelines, because the Olympics was the one team that I never made. I made the world team and all this stuff, but the Olympics is very elusive. It's once every 4 years, and things had to be perfect. I got injured, all this stuff. It's like how many
Yeah,
excuses you want,
no, of course.
Yeah.
That's a tough one, without a doubt. Well, listen, man. Can you just, as far as following you, is Instagram the only place that you post, these videos with you doing techniques and things like that, or do you do it
No,
on
I have a
other?
YouTube account. I have a
Okay, you
YouTube
do.
account
Oh,
that has
perfect.
about
Okay,
100,000 subscribers now. It's growing.
okay. Well, what
I
is
do
is
that.
it? Where can I find that so I can put that on the show notes for the followers here,
Yeah,
listeners?
you could search Shintaro Higashi. There's not too many Shintaro Higashis in the world on YouTube, and then you
Okay,
could find it. I have a
got it.
podcast as well, Shintaro Higashi Show. Pretty
Got it.
easy.
Shintaro
And then
Higashi
Instagram.
Show
Yeah.
podcast. Got it. All right, and then on IG also. What do you
Yep.
post mostly on YouTube?
Mostly technique stuff. So
Okay,
a lot of what I post on the YouTube, kind of I like clips. I don't do it. I have a guy do it. He like clips some of the videos and then posts it on Instagram and repurpose it. But it's a little bit more in depth technical stuff because I try to I was kind of going into like that, like, oh, doing randori, like rolling with my guys and stuff like this kind of videos. There's some of that on there too. Maybe I will do more of that in the future, but it's a lot to juggle. Doing this and doing the dojo and doing
awesome, man. I'll give you a follow there, and
yeah. Thank you.
it'll yeah, I'm gonna push it through my guys here and our social media. And what we're gonna do here is, over the next few months, we're gonna have a sit down, probably a round table of 10 martial artists from different styles, and some guys that are actually even just won the Olympics now. So
Nice.
we got them all coming on, and I would like to have you also. So
Yeah, we'd love
if
to be a
it's
part of that.
something, it's a
Yeah.
nice round table from different martial artists, and I think it'd be a good fit for that for sure.